Well, good afternoon, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. We are glad that you have joined us this afternoon for some updates and next steps regarding the Rural Life Strong Start Network. Now, I imagine that some of you may be looking at your calendar or trying to find an email or wondering, am I in the right meeting? I thought I was joining a meeting about the Network of Champions. Well, you're in the right place. This change in the name of our network is one of the updates that we will talk about a little more in depth here in just a little bit. But you are in the right place. Our Strong Start Network, formerly known as the Network of Champions, is the topic of our informational meeting this afternoon, along with some other exciting updates. But first, a couple thoughts about Zoom. Just reminded, if you will keep yourself on mute, but feel free at any time to unmute and ask questions. Of course, we would love to see your faces if you feel comfortable or are in a place where you can do so. So start that video if you want to. And then also the chat feature at the bottom of your screen as well on that toolbar. Feel free at any point to chat a question or comments, and we will surface those to the whole group as needed. So with that, a couple quick introductions. A part of our team, we have Dr. Richard Kitzmiller, and I am Bethany Fillers, and we're so excited to have you this afternoon. Also with us from our team, John Payne and Brittany Sieber. And although I don't have their pictures, all of our Rural Life coaches are on the call as well, so we are glad they are here. But we are very excited to also welcome Reagan Kelly and Dr. Jenna Donovan, our partners from TNTP, and they will introduce themselves in more detail in just a little bit as they give us some additional details about, well, keep it a secret for now, about some exciting things happening with our network. All right, so our objectives for this afternoon, this conversation serves two purposes. One, to announce the Strong Start Learning Series, which is some professional learning that has been designed to immediately support our ELA teachers who are out there learning and implementing their new curricular materials. And wow, what a year to take on utilizing new materials. So also we want to share updates and next steps for our Strong Start Network, including the name change, which we've already talked about. And we introduced this concept of a learning community back in June. And once we're done with this meeting and this presentation is shared, you will have access to the links that are embedded within this presentation as well. So if you didn't get a chance to join us in June and want to watch that webinar, you will have that linked here. All right, so just to remind ourselves, what is really the purpose of the Rural Life Network Improvement Community, which we're calling the Strong Start Network? What will we explore as a community of learners? So our intention is to provide participants with a community of support focused on learning and implementing newly adopted ELA materials. As I mentioned before, utilizing new materials is always quite a lift, but certainly given the pandemic and the shifts we've had to make and how we're offering learning, this could be a real benefit for teachers as they jump into using these materials. Alongside that, our goal is to establish a regional community of lead learners made up of individuals who will champion the challenging and rewarding work of improving student outcomes, specifically and very excitingly at the middle school level. We often have professional learning geared to the early grades or high school, so we're excited in this case to offer support specifically for grades 6 through 8. And really our hope is then that we would be able to provide students with a strong start toward their futures. Again, this thinking that we're getting a strong start on both the implementation of new materials, which then also leads to a strong start for our students in our classrooms. So our goal is for this support to be high impact, and we're defining that as systematic professional learning. We know that research provides evidence that really the secret sauce for implementing any new curriculum or initiative for that matter is some type of systematic approach to support. In this case, our systematic professional learning will be focused on the implementation of these new materials in their actual context. So teachers using materials in their classrooms with their students in those contexts. And this was interesting, you know, one study spanning, gosh, over 6,000 schools across 6 states found that when there was an absence of systematic professional learning and support, even though they had high quality instructional materials, it ultimately had little to no effect on improvement in student learning. So we don't want that to be us, right? We want to make sure that now that we have high quality instructional materials, that we are engaged in some professional learning that's going to help us make the most of that for our students. All right, so with that, we want to cue the learning community. Again, our thinking is that, you know, regionally, everybody has this need. Our ELA teachers are implementing these new materials, and why not join together as part of a community and learn from one another? So in speaking to some key updates, we wanted to really outline some things we've previously communicated and then some things that we've updated based on how we've reassessed our vision for this network. And we believe that these changes will make the network even better. So yes, before we had previously communicated that this was the network of champions. Since then, we've crystallized some thinking about what we can offer as a part of this network, and we've shifted to calling it the Strong Start Network. Previously, we had shared that it was open only to phase 1 rural life schools. So that would be the first, 35, 36 schools that were with us as part of this project. But now we're opening up this network to all rural life schools. So we're very excited about the opportunity to expand the reach of this network. Oh, originally we had plans to kick this off in September, and that's back when the school year was going to start, as it's always started for us in the past. But again, given where we are with COVID-19, and as we're taking time to better understand our new normal and what school is looking like for us all across the region, our plans now are to launch in December or January. And also with that include some kind of a preview as to what this network might entail. And I'll get to that piece in just a moment. So something that's not changed is the idea that this is a competitive application. So we know that there'll be some interest, and with that, we want everyone to apply. And really, membership would be teachers, of course, leaders, instructional coaches, district supervisors can make up the teams that apply for the network. One shift we did have that it was due by Labor Day, but again, given the circumstances, we are moving that application date to October 30th. And then as I noted or hinted toward, before we were thinking about learning opportunities occurring within the network, right? But that's how we would start this work, and it would be for those participants that were a part of the network. But we are excited to share now that we are actually going to kick off kind of an intro to the network, a chance to get to know a little bit about the type of learning the network might engage in through a 4-part learning series that'll be open to all 6 through 8 ELA teachers across our region. So you won't have to apply a little bit more later. Pretty much all you have to do is register and show up, but this will be available for all teachers in the region. So I want to share a little bit more about this 4-part learning series. Again, we know that teachers more than ever face a variety of challenges to starting strong with these new materials. We know that obviously given the effects of the pandemic, that's impacting how we're using these materials and maybe our comfort level or what trainings we've been engaged in. Typically though, many of us engage in maybe 1 or 2 days of curricular training ahead of using some resources. So we saw this as a need that we could meet in our partnership with TNTP, and we're offering a series of 4 sessions, again for all 6 through 8 ELA teachers. And participants in this series will, of course, explore a variety of high leverage literacy practices that would meet our needs in virtual, in-person, and or hybrid learning environments. But really what will set this series apart from some other professional learning opportunities that are out there right now will be this connection and this very intentional way that we are going to connect key learning from the series to concrete examples from districts' adopted materials. And so I've listed kind of the top ones that have been adopted around our region. And with that, participants will engage in 75 minutes of learning, which is really tied to that first bullet that we looked at there. And then also collaboration with each other, reflection on practice, some time with some concrete planning using those materials. And we're also going to include some breakout groups based on the materials that teachers have adopted. So we might have a breakout room with folks using Amplify ELA, a breakout room for those using Pearson, so on and so on. So we're really going to design these sessions to let them be really focused on the materials in teachers' hands. All right, so I've kicked us off with a little bit of details, but we're going to dig in a little deeper. And at this time, I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Jenna Donovan and Reagan Kelly, our TNT partners for the Strong Start Network. And at this time, I will unmute there and hand it over to Jenna and Reagan.
Okay. Bethany, if you stop sharing, I think I can share my screen.
Oh, I thought I did. Maybe I didn't.
Okay, there we go. Okay, hi everybody. As Bethany mentioned, I'm Jenna Donovan. I work as a director at TNTP, and we're really excited to be here with you guys today to preview some of the work and partnership we've started talking about with the Niswonger Foundation for supporting all of your schools. So a bit about myself. I'll introduce myself, and then I'll give my colleague Reagan a chance to introduce herself. So before I joined, I've been at TNTP about 5 years. Before joining TNTP, I was a middle school English teacher, a reading specialist, and instructional coach. And then I also got my doctorate in literacy education, started doing a lot of work around teacher education and professional learning around literacy. And it's the work I'm most passionate about. The past few years at TNTP, the past 3 years, I've been working actually in Nashville public schools, supporting them around their implementation of high quality literacy materials, and really excited to get to continue to work in Tennessee and support all of you as you guys launch this work this year. I will hand it over to Reagan to introduce herself.
Thanks, Jenna. My name is Reagan Kelly, and I'm a partner at TNTP. I've worked at TNTP for about almost 8 or 9 years now. And before that, I was a teacher and a literacy coach and a school leader in California and New York and Washington, D.C. But I have been working in Tennessee for about the last 4 years with Jenna and some other folks in Nashville and in communities across the state, many of which are in East Tennessee, on literacy implementation. And I worked with a lot of the early adopters in the LIFT network for literacy implementation work in the last few years. So I'm excited to meet you all and to be here.
So a bit about TNTP. We are a nonprofit organization whose mission is focused on ensuring that every child in our nation's public schools has access to an excellent education. And that means that our work looks very different in different places. We help schools put together all the elements of great teaching. In some cases, that looks like supporting recruiting and training excellent new teachers, or it looks more like the work that Reagan and I do in the organization, which is supporting the implementation of rigorous academics in schools. But we do work across the country. And I'm going to turn it over to Reagan to talk a little bit about the specific work we've been doing in Tennessee the past few years, so you can hear more about that.
Great. So we have worked with schools and school systems across the state of Tennessee for more than 15 years. I think before my time, we ran things like the Nashville Teaching Fellows, worked heavily in Shelby County and Memphis around a lot of their teacher recruitment and trainings pieces. And in the last, I would say 5 to 10 years, have really shifted our focus and done a lot of work in both talent, but also in academics. So as Jenna mentioned, really helping districts and schools to make sure that students have strong content in front of them every day, and teachers have strong instructional practice to bring that content to life, and that students have engagement and with that content, and that those things are all working smoothly, both in the classroom level, but at the school and at this district level as well. So you can see in this slide some of the places we've worked over the last several years. And again, I think almost all of these, we have focused mostly on literacy. There's a few math folks sprinkled in there, or places where we've done both of those things, but really worked across these in literacy. And we've also worked at the state level with the department to train core consultants, to help them to assess where schools were pre-adoption. We worked in the unit starters, if you've heard of those, in some of the elementary buildings. So we've had a pretty deep relationship with districts and with the department, and sort of helped some of the translation and feedback circle between those two things over the years. And so one of the things that we keep front of mind, we always sort of like to lead with this, is that there has been a lot of change, certainly in the last few months in Tennessee, in terms of literacy, but even in the last several years, there's been a real, pendulum swing towards using stronger materials. There's a lot of early adopters across the state who have already seen results in student achievement on the TN Ready and on their screeners and things like that with strong materials. But we can't forget sort of the leading data point here, which is that we still are only at about a third of students who are being able to read, understand, and express understanding of grade level text. So we're not where we need to be. And I think, and Jenna will get into this a little more, but with the adoption of new materials, we have a real sort of turning point here to make a shift in how we operate as adults with kids, to maximize the potential and start to see change, to change this number and sort of flip it on its head. And I think to complicate that, we have the global pandemic that we've all been grappling with, both personally and professionally, I'm sure. And so we all sort of have always talked about the learning loss you get over the summer, and you may have seen this data. I think it came out last spring, actually, in the midst of the the throes of the early parts of the COVID shutdown. But the NWEA, the company who produces NWEA, sort of pulled their data set and made an estimate of what the slide would look like for students across different grade levels. You can see on the left, the different grade levels are different colors there, and what it would look like on a typical last day, and what we typically see for a slide, and then where the school closure was right there on that vertical dotted line. And so the estimates are that students are coming back this fall, or have come back in many cases already, with about 70% of the learning gains, so like a 30% loss in reading in particular. And so it's even more grave, and that number is even a starker number, I think, given where we are globally with school right now.
So I'll let Reagan leave it on that very positive, dark note for us. But I think it's really good framing for the learning that we want to do as a group here, both bringing together that experience that Reagan was speaking of in Tennessee, of seeing the challenges of implementing new materials and the learning that requires, and layering in with that this urgent need around student learning and the gaps that students are arriving into our virtual or in-person classrooms with this fall. So as Bethany mentioned, we have been talking with Niswonger about like what are the most urgent needs of teachers that we can really respond to this fall, and this feels like the place to address this, which is both you all are in a really pivotal moment as you adopt new instructional materials. It is a huge opportunity to be able to offer rigorous, rich text and complex tasks to students across your communities. And that's a really exciting moment, I think, to be in as a state. And at the same time, it requires a tremendous amount of work and learning as educators to be able to undertake that and really implement it well for our students. I know I have seen personally in my work with schools and districts, the amount of commitment and learning time and persistence it requires from teachers to really learn those new materials, grapple with the problems, troubleshoot, think about what this means for their students and how to really make it apply for their classrooms. And that takes a lot of work and time and effort. And we're layering on top of that this year, this additional challenge of all the different contexts and variables you're facing. So you may be teaching in person or teaching a hybrid model, or teaching entirely virtually for the first time and really trying to be a virtual teacher with your Bitmoji and all. It's hard to figure out all of the what high quality instruction should really look like in those models. So we have designed this learning series to really respond to both of those needs. So making sure that as you guys launch your school year, you're already getting the opportunity to start to think about what your materials, what the underpinnings of them are and what they should look like in your classroom, but pairing that with what are the best practices of a virtual learning experience for our students, specifically in a literacy classroom, and thinking about how to support you all in both learning those things and planning for your own classrooms. So the Strong Start learning series, as Bethany mentioned, will be, we've planned 4 sessions. They're 75-minute sessions that will combine both some knowledge building for teachers and time to plan and collaborate. I will say we've designed these to be standalone. So some of them you might be interested in coming to all of them, and that's wonderful. Some of them you can pick and choose based on your needs. So I'll preview a little bit about what that content will look like. Here's a little bit of an overview of what will be true in all of our sessions. So to start, there will be this big focus on virtual learning. And, I think really thinking about, there are a lot of things we know about what strong literacy instruction looks like. And the challenge for all of us is translating, okay, what do those things look like in our virtual classrooms? And so we'll just spend some time on those topics. And also thinking about the complexities of synchronous instruction versus asynchronous instruction, and how we use those different levers depending on the needs of our content. Also, in every session, we'll be looking, as Bethany mentioned, at examples from your curriculum materials and making sure that we're making connections as you guys start to understand and deepen your understanding of those materials. We're also thinking about what those would look like in your particular context, so in a virtual context. And as a part of that too, we want to make sure that we have opportunities for you guys to collaborate with one another with teachers who are implementing similar materials. You guys are going to be your best. I have seen time and again that colleagues and teachers are each other's best resource in this work. And so creating this professional learning community where you have colleagues to help push your thinking and support you and answer your questions, I think will be one of the biggest takeaways. And then lastly, always time for that collaboration and planning piece so that you'll leave every session with some concrete plans to take back to your classroom and implement right away, because that's where you'll get to see the real value of this work is with your students. So a bit of an overview of the 4 different sessions. So the first session will really be around focusing on engaging students in rich text in a virtual classroom. I think we all know that, or I heard from many teachers as the spring shutdown happened, that this engagement piece was one of the most challenging pieces. They felt like students, even when they got them to actually sign on, they were not really participating. They couldn't quite figure out how to make them active learners. And so we know that this is one of the primary challenges that teachers are facing. So we'll focus on what are some real concrete specific strategies that you can use in your classroom to engage students more throughout the lesson, and specifically look at some examples from your curriculum and think about how would we apply these to the virtual space. The second session is focused on close reading. We know that close reading is a really important access point and scaffold that we use in our literacy classrooms to give students that access to rich and challenging and complex text. As we can see in a virtual classroom, this is even more important, where students need even more scaffolding and opportunity to be able to access those challenging texts we're providing them. And so we'll think about, okay, how do we take those principles that we know of a strong close read and apply it to a virtual classroom? And again, we'll look at some examples from curriculum and think about how do we apply this from your content, from your specific curriculum into your virtual classroom. The session 3 will be focused on developing writers. Again, I think writing is a place that I heard from a lot of teachers in the spring. They were really struggling with how do we get our students writing during this time, and writing in meaningful ways and writing in the ways that develop them as readers. And there's actually, I think, a lot of places we can push ourselves in the virtual space to really give students more and more opportunities to have strong writing experiences, to get feedback from their teachers and their peers, and to be writing about rich text. So we'll think more about that in this session. And then the last session is really focused around fluency and volume of reading. So thinking about some practical ideas for implementing fluency practice and increasing volume of reading while students are out of our in-person classroom. As we know, increasing volume of reading, and for students who are struggling readers, giving them access to fluency practice, especially at the secondary level, is increasingly important. So we want to think about how we might offer those things in a virtual space as well. As I said, we would love to have every teacher at every one of these sessions if you're interested, but there's also the option, if there's one of these topics that feels most relevant to you, you can definitely pick and choose. These are designed for you to be able to come to the sessions that are most relevant to you. And I will pause there for questions and see. That was a lot of information. So I don't know if folks have questions. I'm happy to pause here and answer, or if there's anything, Bethany, that you would like to add based on everything I shared there.
Let's see, Jetta, we do have one question from the chat. It says, will sessions be offered after normal school hours? In other words, when will the sessions be offered?
Great logistics question. Yes, we're planning to offer them at 3:30 on Wednesdays, and we've firmed up some dates on that as well that we can share following this session, so you can go ahead and plot those into your calendar. But yes, the plan will be to have them at 3:30 so that you can come to them even if you've got a full school day.
And we've got some logistical information here in just a little bit that we will share with you. And then, of course, like Jetta was saying, and some follow-up resources that we'll send your way.
I had a quick question. So typically my school will do meetings on Wednesdays, like that's their day to pull a meeting in the afternoon. Will any of these be recorded so that I can come back and watch them later if by chance I have an administrative, or not administrative, but a staff meeting perhaps one particular day?
Yes, we are. We're going to record all of these and post these in a centralized location so that folks will have access to them if for some reason your schedule doesn't allow you to attend one of the sessions.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes. Well, why don't we, Jetta, transition back to our other slide deck, and then we can give a little bit more detail. Let's see here. So let's pull back up here. All right. So yes, we want you to join us, right? We hope that as you're hearing about both these sessions and more broadly about the network that will follow, we hope that you see this professional learning as a valuable opportunity for your teachers, right? And we know that for professional learning to be truly valuable, in that it impacts teacher effectiveness, and more importantly, it impacts student results. We know that it has to be standards-based, and certainly these sessions and the work of the network will be rooted in the standards, the expectation of the standards, what they look like, what they sound like and feel like in the classroom, what it looks like for students to master those standards in that 6th grade classroom, 7th grade classroom, 8th grade classroom. And when we get that understanding of the standards, we know that there's change in educator knowledge, skills, and dispositions that follow, which then also impact teacher practice. And so our hope there is to cultivate that change and growth in knowledge and skills and ultimately educator practice, which then changes student results. Of course, this graphic comes from the Standards for Professional Learning, from Learning Forward. And so I've got that linked here as well that you can access after the session. And so a few more details then about the Strong Start series and the network as a whole. All right, so for the Strong Start series, Jetta referenced some Wednesdays on the calendar, and we've got those dates outlined. And shortly after this session, in the coming week or so, we will send out additional information to schools and districts. And as a reminder, this learning series, this four-part learning series, is open to all 6 through 8 ELA teachers. And we will, like I said, send some additional information out that will include some registration details. As we discussed, we will be recording these sessions and hosting these sessions via Zoom, much like what we are on today. Then also thinking kind of more long-term as we consider folks who are interested in joining or applying to join for the Strong Start Learning Network. Here, an application link will follow in a communication to districts and schools. We had communicated that application in previous sessions, and nothing's changed about the application except an update on the name of the network. And so if you've got access, if you have access to that link, it's still the same application. We just have an updated version of it to note the name change. Again, those are competitive applications. And those are due October 30th. But again, we'll be re-communicating this information in a follow-up. And just also acknowledging that membership includes 2 years of learning. So when you apply to be a part of the network, it's a 2-year commitment. And with that comes the learning, all the fabulous resources from our partnership with TNTP, and then of course stipends for our teachers and leaders who are involved. All right, so at this point, any other questions? I'm glad somebody asked about the time. Like I said, we're tentatively thinking 3:30, although if there's feedback that 3:45 might work better, we could maybe shift it to that degree, but we'll communicate that, like I said, in a follow-up email. But any other questions about logistics, or the purpose of the network, or the learning series?
I do have a question. Hi, I'm Sarah, and I was just wondering, say you have, I'm working in Sullivan County this year and working, say, you know, they have worked with TNTP with you all before, and say they're thinking about this and like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. Is it something for them to consider? Would it be possible for them to consider, you know, since this is building the network within the schools that we're working with, say they wanted more focused support specifically from TNTP at the building or the site level. Is that something that you all would consider? Or is that something the school or the district outside of that needs to consider, if that makes sense?
I'll take a stab first. For members who join the network and are, you know, apply, join the network and make that commitment for 2 years, part of that building specific district specific support will be included as part of the network itself.
Okay.
So then if there's something outside of that, I'm sure we can work to kind of think that through on a kind of a case-by-case basis. Reagan or Jetta, anything to add in that regard based on your experiences?
No, I think that's right. I would say, I mean, I work closely with Sullivan, so I know their contacts pretty well. I think it will, one thing I can imagine being concerned about is that this would be like 2 different things and it might be confusing, or like, are you saying the same stuff? And I think you would find it would be very well coordinated. I mean, the work we're doing with Sullivan is a little, you know, a little more district level than teacher level, but
they're just kind of wanting to stretch it up, almost like, I think of it like Gumby, you know, they've got K through 5. And so we're just kind of trying to think about just wrapping our arms around K8, you know,
Yep.
so trying to keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
With some specific needs. So that was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. We'll continue to coordinate. So if you end up, you know, in the group, Jetta and I can speak to Kate, who works with Sullivan, and Robin, and Mary,
Okay.
all the people, Billy, everybody.
See, Bethany, there was a question in chat, but I think Dr. Kitzmiller's answered it. The question was about if you've already submitted your application, you know, back during the July timeframe, do I need to reapply? And he put basically, no, you do not need to. They'll retain those.
Perfect. And I'll just add, we did receive some applications that appear to be partial submissions. So if you remember, the application itself, and this will be included in our follow-up email, contains 3 parts. There's a part where you talk about your team and your rationale for choosing, you know, who's going to be a part of the network, who's applying as a part of that team. Then there's the Google form where each team member speaks to their dispositions and why they feel like they'll be a great champion to this work. And then there's the final part or piece of the application, which is pretty much just a recognition that, hey, I know what I'm getting signed up for, right? This is a 2-year endeavor. We're going to get our hands dirty and really dig into this work together, and there'll be some expectations around membership. So I would just encourage those of you that have applied to check with all your teammates and whoever is kind of the team lead to make sure that you've got all those aspects completed.
Can I ask a question, a follow-up on that, Bethany?
Yes.
So as far as I know, I was the only one that applied from my particular school. So when I submitted my application in July, you know, and it asks for the team members, I left that portion blank and I didn't have a follow-up. So I know you're saying some submitted partial, and I just wanted to make sure that I was one of those or was not one of those, if there's something else that I needed to do in order to complete that particular application.
For sure, Megan. We can connect offline and just kind of look through everything that's been submitted and follow up on that. Will that work?
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Yes. Hey, maybe you can recruit some folks to join you. They can get a feel for the work as a part of these learning series sessions. Sorry, Catherine, go ahead.
Oh, I'm fine. You say we have until October. When's the deadline for the application?
October 30th.
Okay.
We've extended it just to make time and space, given that everybody's trying to kickstart this year in such a different fashion than we ever would have imagined we would start a year. And then also to make some space for folks to be a part of the Strong Start Learning Series and get a feel again for the type of learning and work that we would do as a part of this network. So that extended timeline acknowledges that. All right, well, how about at this point, those of you that want to hop off and head on to something else, feel free to do so. Of course, some of us can hang back and answer any other specific questions that folks have. But yes, be on the lookout for some follow-up information, and we look forward to seeing you at the Strong Start series and look forward to seeing your application come through for the network as a whole. Bye, everybody. We'll hang around.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jetta. Thank you, Reagan.
So, Bethany, for Greene County, I am unaware of any teachers or teams that have applied, but I think this is something that would be a really great thing. Could you let me know if you've received anything from Greene County? And if not, then I can take the application and speak to the principals in our district to see if we can develop some teams to apply.
Will do. I'll follow up with you, Leanne.
Okay, thanks, Bethany.
Mm-hmm.
Bethany, did you want me to hang back now, or did you just want me to follow up with you later?
How about I reach out to you via email? And we can
That's
kind of
perfect.
get the conversation started there. Thanks,
yes, that's
Megan.
perfect. Sorry, there was a lot of background noise when you were answering earlier, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate you. All right, well, it looks like a lot of internal folks. So at this point, we'll call it a wrap. All right, Reagan, Jetta, thank you so much. And Jetta, we will see you Friday, right, as part of our coaches meeting.
Yep, sounds great. I'm excited.
Yeah, Reagan, are you going to be able to join Friday or just?
I'll try to pop in. I'm going to check my schedule.
That'll work. No worries. All right. Well,
Thanks,
we will
everyone.
see everybody
Bye.
later.
Bye.